Hello, guys. Welcome to Break 'em Downs. This is the second episode of a YouTube podcast. So, what we're going to do over the next few months is to do individual videos where we're talking about UFC, MMA in general, Bellator, boxing as well. And then we're going to get together and we're going to do our familiar audio podcast, which you can actually find on Anchor. We're going to put the link below so you can access that. Follow the link, and there is about 19 podcasts on there for your enjoyment. We tackle all sorts of different topics, but mainly UFC, what's happening in the world of MMA. We break down fights, and you know what? We're getting better at that. We're getting quite accurate in our predictions, though sometimes, admittedly, they do fall flat on their face. So we've got a few interesting things to talk about on tonight's show. Starting with the big fights coming up tonight, guys. We've got some really good fights on the ESPN card, and we're going to start off talking about the co-main event with Yair Rodriguez and Jeremy Stephens. This is a great fight. It's actually been labelled Jeremy Stephens and Yair Rodriguez 2. Michael and I had a chat about this, and we don't think that's necessarily. It's a bit misleading. If you don't know, the first fight ended in absolute disaster. I left a lot of fans outraged, disappointed, heartbroken. We were waiting for two of the best featherweights in the game to, throw down. What happened after 30 seconds? It was an accidental eye scratch. Jeremy Stephens appeared as though he could not continue, despite the negative attention he got shortly thereafter, which I think was unmerited, to be honest. So we are in a position now where we've got the rematch. It's been rescheduled, and we're seeing it tonight. So I'm really looking forward to this one. There's a bit of a grudge now. In the aftermath of the fight, Yair Rodriguez went up to Jeremy Stephens. It looked as though he was trying to be cordial and say, don't worry about it. Mistakes happen. We'll run it back. But it obviously got a bit tasty because Jeremy Stephens pushed him quite aggressively in front of Rodriguez's family, and it looked as though it could have gone pretty nasty in that hotel foyer if there wasn't people there to split both guys up. Anyway, looking at that fight tonight, you've got two really interesting fighters. You've got Jeremy Stephens, who is a stalwart of the game. He's been there, for decades. He's just one of those fighters who is so exciting to watch. He has got bombs in his hand. He always brings it. Every time you watch Jeremy Stephens fight, you're going to be entertained. You're going to be thrilled, and you're going to be on the edge of your seat because it's only a matter of time. So, before he lands that big shot and gets the KO. In recent years, he's kind of had a 50-50 kind of win and loss. I'd need to actually bring up his record to see, just how accurate that is. But he's coming off a fight with Zabit, where he struggled a little bit. He struggled with Zabit's range. He struggled with Zabit's unorthodox striking. So he's going to want to get in there and get the win. Yair's quite similar in the sense that he is quite lengthy. He's got long limbs. He likes to fight at range. He can use his kicks at range. We've seen him utilize that in many fights against Andre Fili, against BJ Penn, against the Korean Zombie. So I think Yair's going to want to keep range. Avoid going into the pocket, stay out of the kind of the clinch area where Stephens gets really dangerous, and kind of stay in the kind of the zone 4 region where he can kind of pick him apart from the outside, throw a few flashy kicks and maybe get a TKO or a knockout. Okay, feeling that, what's probably going to happen if Yair's to win this is going to be by a decision, in my opinion. Jeremy Stephens isn't going to go down easy. For Jeremy Stephens to win this, he's going to want to make it ugly. He's going to want to get under Yair's skin. Yair has a tendency, I feel, he doesn't like the pressure. He hates the pressure. He's a nice, clean fighter. You saw it in the Korean Zombie fight. He just didn't like it when the Korean Zombie got ugly in his style, his dirty boxing. He didn't like that kind of heavy wrestling game from Frankie. He really struggled with that. Frankie was able to tee off on him. Jeremy Stephens doesn't tend to use wrestling very much. I do think this is going to be a striking fight. I really do. I think it's going to be on the feet for, I'd say 90%. When you see a curveball tonight and Yair Rodriguez takes him down right away. Yeah. But anyway, we'll see what happens. I've predicted Jeremy Stephens to win that fight. I'm going to stick with my prediction. I think Jeremy Stephens actually gets a TKO finish. I really do. I think he closes the distance. I think he's going to catch Yair, and I think he's going to really hurt him. I think Yair is going to kind of cover up, and the ref's going to step in and call it off. And I'm going to say that's going to happen in the second round. All right. Moving on to the main event. Now, the main event's really interesting because you've got Chris Weidman's maiden voyage at in the light heavyweight division. We've talked, myself and Michael, about this, and it hasn't really worked out for Luke Rockhold, has it? He went up and fought Juan Blachowicz, who's fighting Yair Souza, by the way. They seem to be giving him the middleweight. But it didn't work out for Rockhold because Rockhold appeared very, very small. This could happen again tonight. You could be looking at somebody who is just too small for that division. And Dominic Reyes might just be able to bully Chris Weidman. He might be able to bully him. But we shall see. One of the things that Brendan Shaw brought up in his podcast, which I find very interesting, was when you look at the last 4 Chris Weidman fights, he was actually winning all of those fights. You look at the Yair Souza fight, he was winning that fight. His boxing looked really good in that fight. Boxing looked as good as it has ever done, really, as far as I'm concerned. And ultimately, he ran into steam a little bit, and Yair managed to land the heavier shots. I think it was in the third and final round of that fight. Yair put him away in pretty vicious style. Then you had the Romero fight, and again, Chris Weidman was winning that fight. I think that fight, looking back at that fight, I think he was 2-0 up. And, Romero does what Romero does and got the heavy knockout finish again. So he's got that he's got that kind of duck to try and beat tonight. If he's winning the fight, he needs to try and get over the line. One of the things that I would say goes in Chris Weidman's favor tonight is this fight works for him stylistically. Dominic Reyes is a striker. He is a very athletic, tall, lengthy striker. I don't think he's ever fought anybody like Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman is an elite wrestler in the UFC, and he's got great striking as well. But that rinse and repeat moniker that Curtis Blades was talking about recently, I think that's what Chris Weidman. I think that's where his main advantage lies, and if he utilizes that, he can get this done tonight. I'm actually calling a Chris Weidman victory here. I don't think the size is going to be as big a problem as it appeared to be in the Luke Rockhold Juan Blachowicz fight. I actually think Juan Blachowicz is a much harder fight than Dominic Reyes. I think his striking is better, and I do think as well he would be able to kind of deal with Weidman's wrestling a little bit more than Reyes is going to be able to. So I see a rinse and repeat. I see Weidman getting into dominant positions on the ground and just going to work down there. Do I see Reyes having success? Of course. Reyes is a really kind of good striker, lengthy. He will do the best of his work on the outside, keep Weidman away. He definitely needs to watch out for the takedown. So his footwork is going to be really, really important. But I think 11-0 going into this fight, I think it's slightly deceptive. I think he lost his last fight against Volkan Ozdemir. I think it was a controversial decision on the referee's part. But I think it's deceptive. I think at this point we are looking at one of the best wrestlers, and I think he's going to struggle with that tonight. So I do predict Reyes picks up his first loss in the UFC, and Weidman goes on to bigger things after this. So we'll see what happens. So look forward to that. I know I'm going to stay up. Myself and Michael will surely break down we'll recap it tomorrow on our podcast on Anchor. So if you want to listen to that again, follow the link below. I'll put it up there and you can check that out. Moving on to other news, we've got Conor McGregor calling out Frankie Edgar. This is a fight that's kind of been teased and speculated numerous times over the last 4 years. For me, at this point, it actually makes sense. It makes sense because Conor McGregor needs to get in. He needs to find himself in that octagon again. He needs to get a win. I see him beating Frankie Edgar in 2019 with relative ease. Normal service resumed. Maybe a couple of years back, it would have been a different story, a much more challenging bout. But I see Conor McGregor getting the job done here. The reason why this makes sense for me is because he doesn't necessarily need another Khabib fight just yet. I think that Khabib fight can wait. I think if he steps in there again with Khabib, we're likely to see an even worse performance from Conor and a more dominant one from Khabib. Conor needs to find himself again. Conor didn't look right in that Khabib fight. You can see that his movement was very, very different. I don't know what the instructions are in the gym. He was talking about an injury going into that fight. So perhaps that, made a massive difference. But we're used to Conor McGregor, kind of almost in that stance, kind of in, out, luring the opponent to strike, making a miss, and then using that famous left hand to rock the opponent. We didn't see that. We saw Conor kind of walking them down, quite static, arms down. Head movement wasn't as crisp. It wasn't as quick. Khabib was able to go toe to toe with Conor on the feet. Mind you, Conor was tired after the first round, where he had to deal with Khabib's heavy pressure, his superior ground game. But ultimately, it wasn't the same Conor McGregor. Give him that Frankie fight. Let him find his feet, and then let's go for the rematch. I like the sound of that. Though I do understand Dana. Dana White probably still sees Conor McGregor as the golden pony of the UFC. And, who's going to disagree with that? Conor McGregor, although his stock has dropped, he is still the man. He is still on everyone's lips. When's Conor coming back? And if Conor McGregor does step in there and fight Khabib in a rematch, it's gonna smash the first fight in terms of box office, in terms of sales, in terms of media coverage. It's gonna be an even bigger event this time, because when you look back to 1 year ago, those images of Khabib soaring into the crowd like an eagle, hopping over the cage, those terrifying images of Conor getting attacked from behind, the melee in the ring, all of those images are still very fresh in people's minds. So that second fight is going to be bigger. It's going to be badder. It's going to be a massive, massive business move on the UFC's part. So I completely understand Dana. Dana also talked about Frankie's, his career almost winding down at this point. He referred to Frankie as you pretty much, settle on going to the 135 division, where he was slated to fight Aljamain Sterling. Unfortunately, Sterling has picked up an injury. I don't know if we all know that, but Frankie is off. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, Dana doesn't want the fight to happen. He came out and kind of rubbished that last night. So we will see. Keep your eyes peeled on that one. But I can see both arguments really. Moving on, Weili Zhang, the champion, has dismissed Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She says she's not fighting her. She referred to Joanna, her career at the moment, as one that is a bit of a struggle. And I do think Joanna spent some time kind of trying to refine the form that made her one of the goats, one of the greatest women fighters. She was so dominant for so long, and that was all taken away at UFC 217, where she was dethroned by Rose Namajunas. And yeah, Joanna has struggled to bounce back with ferocity. It's taken her some time. She's had a few good wins. She's beat Tisha Torres, who's kind of just a whirlwind, a pocket rocket. And then you have a good win just last weekend over Michelle Watterson, who was, let's be honest, doing quite well. Though I don't know if Michelle is top five. So I did actually expect a kind of a routine win there from Joanna. But ultimately, look, she's number 4 in the strawweight division. She's, I think, 1 win away. You know, I'd say let's go for the Jessica fight again. Give Jessica Joanna. Let's see Joanna and Jessica 2. And then whoever wins that might be looking at another title shot. Okay, keep things moving in that division. All right. One of the things I just really dislike is to see divisions become stagnant, and that's why I like the modern era where people are able to kind of division hop. You know, go from one weight division to another. I love all that. It keeps things fresh. It gives people the opportunity to, you know, when the competition isn't there. Like, let's look at the flyweights, for instance. When Cejudo beat Johnson and Johnson left, you know, there's not much there for Cejudo. They're talking about the Benavidez fight happening, but you know, it doesn't really make much sense. Cejudo's moved on from that. But you know, with that division hopping there, it's given him an opportunity to fight TJ Dillashaw, become the champ, and it just opens up new opportunities. You know, for all the fighters. So Zhang has set her sights on Shevchenko, which I absolutely love. She's referring to her as one of the best fighters in women's division history, really. So I'd love to see that fight. You got 2 real strong women there, real stocky frames. Be a really interesting fight. I would be interested to see how the striking ability of Zhang competes with the ferocity of Shevchenko, who's just an absolute. She's the bullet, isn't she? She's also called out Rose Namajunas. Well, not called her out, I suppose, but she's expressed an interest in fighting Rose. Rose looked great against Jessica Andrade. We'll all remember the big takedown and her being slammed on her head by the Brazilian. But when you look at that fight again, and I've watched it many times, Rose's footwork is far superior to Jessica Andrade's. Her head movement is excellent. Jessica hardly touches Rose in those first 2 rounds before the fatal takedown. So that's an interesting matchup. I do think that Rose will pose a lot of questions to Zhang. And I'd love to see Rose back in there. You know, she was growing on me as a fighter. And I just think her striking is absolutely fantastic. She's done a lot of work with Pat Barry, and you can see it. Her head movement is excellent. She got power in her hands that we never really saw before. So yeah, I love the idea of those 2 going at it. And I love Joanna and Jessica. So I think that could be like a little mini tournament there. Moving on, Chris Weidman has said that John Jones has looked more beatable now than he's ever done. Pretty bold statement. I don't think John Jones has looked that beatable, to be honest. What I would say is that John Jones has not dispatched of his opponents in the same clinical style. So you had the Anthony Smith fight, which was a bit of a wet fight, to be honest. Nothing really happened. You know, Jones was clearly superior, couldn't put Smith away. Not for lack of trying. I mean, Smith was pretty stubborn. Smith didn't want to engage at times and made the fight fall flat on its face for many kind of sections of it. And then the Thiago Santos fight as well. You know, Jones got hit a few times. He did look pretty damn invincible, though. You know, Santos was throwing bombs at him and catching him, and Jones was simply walking through it. So I don't know if he's looked beatable per se. I do think he has not dispatched of those opponents in the same clinical style, and therefore that's led to Chris Weidman making that statement. So controversial. Looking at moving forward, guys, we've got a couple of great fights on the way. Tonight, obviously, we've got the Stevens and Yair Rodriguez fight. We've got Chris Weidman fighting Dominic Reyes. We've also got fights in the not so distant future. November's looking pretty tasty. If you go to Sherdog.com, you'll find lots of interesting fights on there. And one of those fights that really, really interests me at the moment is the Johnny Walker and Corey Anderson fight. I think that's going to be an absolutely spectacular fight, and I just love this light heavyweight division. There's a little bit of a resurgence, a little bit of competition boiling there. We've got Juan Blachowicz as well, who's fighting, as I said earlier, Jacare Souza. So there's some lovely matchups happening there. People are now jostling to get into line to fight the GOAT, John Jones. Jones came out this week and actually talked about Israel Adesanya. He actually formally relinquished he formally let go of Daniel Cormier as being his pussy, and now he has given that position to Israel Adesanya. So things are heating up between those guys. I love it. I think it certainly adds interest. Though the fight that I really want to see at the moment, we're talking about Anthony Rumble Johnson on the last podcast. Looks like he's set to make a return to the UFC. We don't know what division, but he has raised the question. He wants to fight John Jones at 205, which to me sounds absolutely fantastic. So, in other news in the UFC, let's have a think. I think we've wrapped everything up, guys, tonight. So what I want you to look out for is the after tonight's show, we've got a bit of a breakdown between myself and Michael tomorrow. We're going to break down the fights, recap them, and talk about the weaknesses and the strengths, the biggest winners, and yeah, go from there. So what we're going to try and do as well, we've got a big blank space behind me here. We're going to have the logo up there. We're going to jazz this up a little bit. But I wanted to say thank you for the amount of views on the last video. Hopefully we'll get stronger and stronger as the podcast grows. One of the things that you guys could do to help me out is to actually get some questions, some comments down there as well. But I'm interested in questions and topics that you'd like myself or Michael to discuss on the show. We'd be glad to do that. We'd also be keen to have, if you're interested in conducting an interview with us, just give us a shout and we will have you as a guest speaker on Anchor, our podcast Break 'em Downs on Anchor. We'll have a few questions for you. You can go into the hot seat and do that. So yeah, get busy down there, guys. All right. So I just want to say one more time, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Look out for Michael's podcast coming up as well, and tomorrow's podcast. Enjoy the fights tonight. Grab yourself a beer, sit back, relax, and tune in. Until next time, guys, thank you.